Welcome to the WNBF UK Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the WNBF UK Podcast with me, Sarah Glanville, as your host. I've been really looking forward to today's episode. We are talking to the one and only Jack Thorburn.
Okay.
How are you, Jack?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Good. Jack, we are here to talk about your 2022. What a great but long season. How are you feeling looking back on what was a huge year for you returning to stage?
I was going to say, how long do you want this podcast to be? It was obviously a 40-week prep, so and yours was as well, wasn't it? If I believe, yeah. So we could go on for a while, but yeah, obviously, like you touched upon, it was my sort of return season. I hadn't competed since 2017, so it was a very long time coming. Yeah. So I was really looking forward to it. One of the reasons why it was such a long prep as well is because I thought if I've waited that long to compete, I want to do a fair few shows. So I think I ended up doing 7. Yeah, I think it was 7 shows. So I certainly made the most of it. But no, it was good. I took an extended off season it was sort of one of those where I had a few sort of injuries to sort out. So that was the initial reason for taking a few years off. I didn't personally think I needed to grow an awful lot. Yeah. But then it came down to around about 2019 when I thought, maybe I'll compete, but then obviously COVID hit. Yeah. Which was, I kind of regretted not still competing because I was one of the fortunate ones that had access to a gym the whole time. Yeah. So not that I sort of want an unfair advantage over anyone, but I certainly would have had that. So that would have been quite a good year for me. And then 2020 and 2021, it was one of those where it came to potentially thinking of starting prep, and I was almost on like a good run in the off season, and I was thinking, you know what, maybe I can grow a little bit more. And then the 2 years went past, and it came to starting the 2022 season, and I had those same feelings again. And I thought, you know what, you'll do this the rest of your life. It was the typical bodybuilder thing, never thinking you're ready and thinking, I could grow another year. But then I thought, you know what, just get it done. So started my prep in the start of around about the start or mid-March last year. And then it ran all the way through exactly the same as yours till, what was it? Was it 19th of November? Yeah, 19th of November. I remember that because then that's exactly when it ended, because straight away the American food sort of began then. But so as you can imagine, I think it was 40 weeks. So that's a long season.
It's a really long season, but I feel like I really get what you're saying about kind of getting to the point where you're thinking, maybe I could compete this year, but I'm really comfortable in this like off-season space where I know that I could gain more if I just take a little bit longer to keep pushing. But I mean, it's really fair to say that time off of stage really paid off for you. I guess going into your last off season, you said it was injuries and stuff like that. That was your main priority. You weren't planning on pushing as long as you did. Did you think that you were going to have to push like weight as high and sort of push as hard as you had to do it in off season, or was just recovering from injury your main priority initially?
Yeah, I think I've touched upon this on like social media and stuff, but the reason why I compete is because I love to train. Yeah. So all I wanted to do was take the off season to just get my training back to where I wanted it to be. So I didn't really care how long that took, because I knew I was going to get there eventually. So I never said to myself, right, I want to be back on stage at this time. It was just, I want to get training back, and then once it's back, then I'll sort of plan the competitive season out. But which is also why I didn't get back on stage until this year, because I still wasn't 100% happy with my training. Yeah. But then once again, I started questioning, will I ever be 100% happy with it? So that's when I finally sort of bit the bullet and decided. But then, unfortunately, training went downhill a little bit then. But it's back on the rise now. I think ultimately I'm very critical, and I think certain things, will I ever be happy with them? I don't know. So
It's one of these things that's a great quality. It pushes you to always strive for better. But it's that finding that balance between, am I being too hard on myself? Am I really pushing for something that I'm never going to be able to achieve? But I think it's safe to say that I've definitely seen a lot more from you on social media, seeming like you're having some good sessions recently. Just the weight coming back up and recovering from prep, it seems like it's all going well. You've competed obviously a number of times now. I guess I'm interested to find out how preps have differed for you through time, as you've got to know yourself a bit better, as your physique's grown and matured.
Yeah, I think the problem was I had a very good sort of introduction into bodybuilding. I think maybe it was because I had a bit of a baptism of fire. So in 2016, my first prep, so when I was 22, so it was my junior year, my last year as a junior, I prepped for a PCA show, and then also I did a couple of BNBFs. That prep, I went 0 carb. The day prep started, literally the day, we went 0 carbs. So it wasn't 0. It was, I know the exact number, I can still remember it. It was 22 grams of carbs, but that was all from fiber. All from fiber. So, and I did that for 16 weeks straight, prepping for my first PCA. So obviously, for a first-time competitor, I'd been introduced to the deep end straight away, so I knew sort of the tough, and I just thought that's what prep was. And ever since then, I've never really struggled on a prep. I don't see myself as anything special, but if I've got a task to do, I'm going to do it regardless. I never complain about anything. It maybe the certain dietary methods help me out quite a bit as well. Like, for example, my protein has always been high. My protein consumption's always been high. I used to get hounded for it years back. My protein's always been high. It's never dropped below 300 grams a day. My water consumption's pretty high as well. That's always around about 8 to 10 liters a day, which is why I'm quite glad I'm living the self-employed life now, because I can remember when I was back teaching, that was very hard, because these days you can't leave a classroom like teachers used to. You can't now, because you come back in, it's absolute chaos. Just little dietary hacks, you could say. But I don't know, I'm very motivated, very determined, so I can prep through most things. So I had a pretty hard prep in 2016. I just thought that was bodybuilding then. So every other prep after that was pretty easy. So I prepped in 2016, what did I do? 3 shows. I did a PCA. Did okay in it, but I was probably the only natural in the show. I was probably the leanest in the show as well. But dieting on 16 weeks on no carbs as a natural probably wasn't a great look. And then I did a BNBF show. I won that, and which qualified me for the finals, and I made the lovely trip all the way up your end to where was it? Perth in Scotland, and did the finals there. So that was my introduction to bodybuilding. That was a really good start. And then I don't know where, because obviously normally naturals don't do back-to-back years, but I think I got bitten by the bug massively, and straight away I thought, right, I'm meant to be competing every year now. I'm a bodybuilder. So I had about a 3-month off season. I think it was about 3 months, which clearly isn't an off season for a natural bodybuilder. I definitely didn't regain hormonal function, or my speech was still really slow. My walking was still really slow. And then it was straight back into a prep. But body weight recovered. I was a chunky boy starting prep, but that shows that body weight definitely doesn't sort of coincide with all these hormones.
It's not all of it.
So I prepped again in 2017, and just did, I focused just on BNBF again then. So I did 3 shows that year. I did a Welsh qualifier, won that, but didn't win the overall. I did the Southern qualifier a couple of weeks later, won that and won the overall. And then I did the finals then. But I woke up on show day and I'd been drafted into the heavyweights after qualifying as a middleweight all year. And that was first year out of juniors to be thrown in with the heavyweights was quite hard work.
Yeah.
But I did well. I think I came fourth, I believe.
That's brilliant.
I felt I should have placed higher, but I always say that. Then that was kind of when I took that big break. Then I knew that, you know, moving forward, I'm going to be a heavyweight bodybuilder, and I thought you've got a long way to go now. So, and then, you know, fast forward 5 years, which seems so like 5 years is an age to be in an off season, and then fast forward 5 years, and then that came to the 2022 prep of last year.
Fantastic. I mean, I think that sounds like that first prep was very much, you were kind of directed on how you were to eat and everything, and you have learned over time, I suppose. I'm imagining you've definitely more carbs than your last prep. You share your meals on your stories. Sam, like, he's definitely eating a lot more carbs now, but you get to know what works for you. You get to a bit more educated in the sport. So you found that first prep, probably just down to the fact that the diet was so restricted, was that probably the hardest experience that you had?
Yeah, and I think with the first two, with the 16 and 17 prep, I was being coached, well, more so in 16, I was being coached by somewhat of a local bodybuilding prep coach. There are a couple, they were prepping me, and they are very old school, but I wanted to do them proud as well. And I'm really proud myself. And I thought, there's no way I'm letting this diet beat me. So, and I used to train with them as well, and I'd never let them beat me in a session and stuff. So I think it was potentially being a bit stubborn as well. And I'd never tell them that I was feeling tired. I can remember one weekend, he messaged me and said, you need to have a cheat meal. You need higher calories. But he said, I know you're not going to have it, so don't worry about it. That's literally what he said to me. He said, you need a cheat meal. You're not going to have it, so don't worry about it. So it was kind of like that attitude, I think, of just trying to just prove that make them proud or whatever, or almost like show them. Because initially when they first took me on board, they thought I was a bit of a pretty boy and I couldn't handle it. So I kind of wanted to prove them wrong. And I think I did that. So, I
think you did. It's funny. I think we've all got a little bit of that in common, don't we? Like, that you can turn it on and you can just be stubborn and you're going to stick to it. And it's for good or bad, I suppose. I suppose it's a fantastic quality as a bodybuilder when you can stick to the plan and get it done. But yeah, it's I think it's a testament to you that you've continued to learn and look to understand more about how this is going to work best for you and how you can get the most out of your training. Although things do take a dip in prep, like trying to feel yourself the best you can, and obviously having carbs in your diet, I'm sure it is more conducive to feeling a little bit better throughout the process. Definitely. Fantastic. So coming into 2022, did you plan for it to be 40 weeks to start off with, or did that kind of evolve over time? Did you know it was going to be as long as that?
So initially the plan was I think it was 22 weeks I had planned for the first show. So I wanted a 22-week prep for the first show. But then I got greedy and then I made it 23. I started prep a week early. I can remember doing it. I don't know why I did it. My birthday's around about that time. And being the sadistic bodybuilder I am, I wanted to have started prep on my birthday so it didn't give me an excuse to go out, because I didn't want to go out for it. So we started prep early. So I wanted to have a 23-week run-in for my first show, which was one of the Northern qualifiers. And then what happened was I came in a lot quicker than I thought I was going to. Yeah. So I was ready about 7 weeks out, 6-7 weeks out from the first show. And it just so happened that there was a show that weekend. So no one knew I was doing it. Like maybe one or two, I think 2 people knew. Yeah. And I ended up doing a show 6 weeks earlier than I'd planned. I did really well. I came second. And I got my qualification for the finals for the WNBF in that show, which gave me another 6-7 weeks then after that before any more shows. So then I did those and then qualified for finals in both those federations. And then the WNBF came up then in between the finals of those 2 shows. Yeah. And because they were 2 weeks apart. And I thought, there was a part of me that thought, oh, it makes sense to do that. You're already ready. And I spoke to a lot of people and they said, well, it's probably not a very good idea because you're going to sacrifice how you look in one of those shows to do it. Yeah. And with me, because I'd been ready for so long for the shows, like when I'm in a prep, I don't sort of take time away from the prep. So for example, if I qualified earlier on in the year, I don't like have a break to then come back down. I'll stay there, which is maybe not so great hormonally, etc. But I think in terms of a look, it can help, because I know it might sound a bit bro sciencey, but when you've been a bit fat for a while, your skin takes a while to really like in around you almost. So you can be lean enough, but because you haven't been there quite as long, especially in male competitors, you get a bit of like a grainier look. Yeah. So I think because I'd been on prep for such a long time and just holding it, I was ready. So I decided to do the WNBF in between, and obviously that turned out to be probably the best decision I ever made, because then obviously qualifying for Worlds then, which was obviously at the time I was so pleased about, but then I thought to myself, oh well, you've just prolonged this diet for however many weeks. But if I'm honest, at the time, like I was struggling quite a bit psychologically. Just had a lot of like anxiety issues at the time. More so like the pressure of competing more than anything. That's what it was. But the goals of having shows was what was keeping me going with it. Yeah. So I actually was quite glad that I had another show to work towards, or so much so that after Worlds, I was almost looking for shows to do at the back end of the year. And there were one or two more shows to do, which were other federations, but I was almost thinking, oh, maybe I could do it. But it was more me just seeking an immediate goal, because now that the prep is finished, which is where a lot of people struggle post-show, because they don't set goals then after, because they think, oh, it's done now, what have I got now? But when I think the best thing you can do is literally look at, right, there's a show in 2 years' time, I'm doing that one, and then the work starts for that, because that'll really stop you sort of edging off things. So, but for me, now I'm thinking, well, I need at least 2 years before I'm even starting a prep. So that's a long time. So that got me worried a little bit, because now I'm thinking, well, I've got 2 years now. What have I got to work towards, or what have I got to keep me focused and going during that time? But I think now setting mini goals now, more like, so getting performance back in the gym, sorting other things out. And also, ultimately there are other things in life, I've got to improve my business, etc. I've got to improve sort of the social aspect of things as well. So there's that as well. But yeah, in short, well, no, it's not in short, it was a long way of saying it. I didn't expect it to be that long, but I knew it. If things went my way, I knew it was going to be that long, because in 2017, my prep was 39 weeks. Yeah, so I knew it was what's to come, and also like that was I was prepared for it as well. I think if you're dieting for that long as well, you can afford to be eating a lot more food towards the end of prep. So that's a good thing. If you've been dieting that long, realistically at the end of prep, my food was nearly 4,000 calories. So I can't really complain about that.
I complain. It's funny. I think like our seasons actually sound pretty similar in terms of you were working towards a show, hoping that you would potentially qualify, and then the qualification coming and being like, right, okay, now I'm pushing forward again.
Sorry, how many did you do? Was it just the two, or did you do?
Oh no, I think I did. It was potentially, I can't even remember now. It was probably 6 or 7 as well.
Oh, okay.
6, I think. So I targeted like the summer shows, because I didn't think I was going to qualify. It was my first season last year. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm just going to do like I went for the UKDFBA Scottish show. That was the first show that I was like focused on. Yeah. And then also went for a PCA. I did a 2 bros, and I did WNBF first timers.
Oh, okay.
And then qualified for finals in all of those shows.
Did you do finals in all of them, or?
Well, I was going to. WNBF was the first one, and I qualified for Worlds, and I decided to take my money out of the travel, because see, for me as well, like it's traveling all the way down to like
that's true.
Down to the other side of the country, so I had like all this money tied up in hotels and stuff for other federations, and I decided to just take all that money back out and put it towards going to LA. So I just chucked it all in for the LA trip. But like it's the same thing to you, as being like, right, focusing on the small goal in front of you and just moving towards that. But I can also really relate to coming out of, especially when you think of 40 weeks, like it's literally been the majority of your year, right? That you're just focused on every single day, meticulously ticking boxes, and you've got this thing that you're looking forward to, we're moving towards, that's everything you're focusing on, and then it's done, and it's like deciding how do you try and frame your mindset to move on to that really far away goal again. And 2 years is a long time when you have been focusing on the next like 5 weeks or the next 7 weeks for the whole of the year. But I think, you're so right. You just need to break it down into like little micro goals that you're able to work towards, like, as you say, feeling better in yourself and improving the quality of your training and socializing and whatnot on outside of bodybuilding life. But it's fantastic, I think, that you've been able to push through, come out the back end, and you're in like kind of your sweet spot now, I suppose, or getting into your sweet spot where
sweeter, we'll say a sweeter spot.
A sweeter spot.
A sweeter spot. Yeah.
So I guess, do you feel like there's any benefits to pushing through a prep as long as you did? Like you obviously mentioned about the granular nature of the look on your physique, but was there any other benefits that you think other people might overlook if they try and push through a quicker prep?
I think it definitely helps in like sort of muscle retention, because like there was no period where I really felt, I don't track my strength an awful lot, but there was no time where I really felt like weak. Yeah. And to be honest, there was never a period where I was really doing an awful lot of output and when my diet was really low. Like there were times when it did get there, but that was like a couple of weeks before the first show. After that, I never had to really like dig in. Yeah. The problem is it's very hard for me to say that because I'm mentally in quite a lot of aspects, I'm very strong, so I don't even acknowledge it if I'm struggling. But I think the stress is a killer for a lot of people, and I think if you've got that long, you reduce the stress massively because you can just afford to sort of cruise in. So I think there's plenty of benefits in terms of stress, and then I think when I mentioned muscle retention, I think that comes from keeping training performance quite high, but also, stress does affect that as well. So there's probably a crossover between the two. And also, like we mentioned earlier, the longer you're at a sort of leaner body fat, the better you look. Within reason, sometimes you do start to string out after a long while, but I think you look better if you're at that point. Like if you go into a show and you've been digging into that show the whole time, you won't look the same as sort of if you've had 2 weeks before. So there's also that in terms of like you can afford to somewhat freshen up into a show, so you can ease off the gas because you'll always look better doing that. So that's another reason why. And ultimately, I love competing as well. So you're always ready for more shows. Then, like arguably, I could have done a few more last year, maybe a couple of the untested ones, but I was so focused on the ones that I had coming up, I didn't even think about that really. Yeah.
There's always another show, isn't there? There's always another stage. But no, I completely agree.
The crazy thing is now there literally is a show every weekend. On some weekends, it's Saturday, Sunday as well. So like if you look on some of the pages on Instagram, share the show day calendar. Compact do a really good one, and it's literally like every weekend now.
It really is. But I completely agree with you. I think for me that was something that I really noticed was just I was able to just take it, I think, a step slower than maybe some other people. My food didn't have to drop half as low because it was just slowly ticking away. And then, as you said, as you were coming into shows, as you were ready, you were able to actually kind of drive your food back up and freshen the look a little bit. Again, just completely taking stress off and stress away from the physique, which is I suppose if you've never done a longer prep, you probably think that it's the opposite, because they can just imagine the diet lasting for longer. But slow and steady, that was my kind of mantra the whole way through. Do you think there was any challenges in the prep being as long? So flipping that question around, like, was there any challenges that you faced because the prep was so long, and how did you overcome them?
I think the obvious one is just you're experiencing any negative effects of prep just for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Also, for me, I didn't have I'm away from my family for a start, and I didn't have too many sort of friends to interact with, but I think you'd certainly notice the sort of the negative effects that come with prep, interacting with people, I think, and they can probably put up with that for a certain amount of time. But it's only a certain amount of time. So, the longer that goes on for, the harder it is for any relationships you have. So I think that's another thing. So unless you're sort of a seasoned competitor, I think a lot of people wouldn't understand that. But I don't know. It does take its toll on you, and you start to think whether this is just how everyone feels normally. But it's certainly not. So a few months or so after prep, when you suddenly start to feel a bit more normal, you think, oh, right, this is what it actually feels like to be normal, not how you felt for the past 40 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's probably a few. There aren't too many negative that are beyond just a normal prep in itself, to be honest, because ultimately, no matter how quick or long you do it, you're always going to be getting down to that lower body fat, and that's where the negatives are, at that lower body fat. So it's the only other thing that will be, because of how long, is just how long you're subjecting other people, like outside of your, like within your circle, that is the negative really.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of, I remember, I'm pretty sure you will have had the same feeling when you won your class at Supernaturals and you're like, oh my God, I can go to LA, like this is amazing. And I literally was just like, I'm going to go and have to tell Steve that this is going to have to go on for like another 6 weeks, because I think at that point he was probably that close to being done with me. But yeah, because you're so right, you don't even realize when you're in it, I think, how far removed you are from just being a normal person. And I keep saying to people, like, this year, like, I just loving being a human again, because like that's the actual way that I would describe what I feel like, is you just feel like you're able to have conversations with people. You don't mind, like, I have a dog, and I was getting to the point where I was walking the dog with earphones in and just like literally not talking to anyone if they tried to talk to me on the dog, or I'm just walking, not wanting to talk. And now, like, I won't mind stopping and having a conversation with someone, which is just crazy to think how insular I'd got last year. But yeah, I suppose that's the negative. If you continue a prep for 40 weeks, everyone around you has to deal with it for 40 weeks.
And they start to think that's the normal you then as well. Just yeah,
completely. So you've competed with a number of federations before, and you've kind of proved last year that you're definitely one of the top natural bodybuilders in the UK, and in the world, actually. But we'll talk about that in a second.
You're buttering me up here. What's the question going to be? You're buttering me up.
So I guess, what attracted you to stepping on stage with the WNBF alongside the other federations that you've competed with for some time now?
Well, obviously, the name initially sort of precedes itself. So it is, within natural bodybuilding, as history goes, it is the biggest federation in the world. Obviously, it's new over here in the UK in terms of like it being a separate federation. So it was relatively new. Yeah. And I'd seen the stage at the first timers early on in the year, and I thought that it looked an amazing stage. It looked like they were putting a lot of effort in. I'm friendly with Fivos, the photographer, as well, and he always does great work. So I thought I need to get some pictures of him as well. And yeah, it just seemed like I've been in contact with Steph and Andrew before, so I know them well. I get on really well with them, and they spoke to me as well a few times, asking me if I'd consider it, and just everyone that I'd spoken to that had competed there said that the federation itself was putting a lot of effort in to sort of how the competitors sort of feel on the day. They made it like a big celebration. And everyone had a positive sort of thing to say about it, really. There weren't any negatives. So I thought, why? It was almost one of those, I was ready, so why not? And then, it was also, I was aware that I had the opportunity to go to Worlds. That was potentially my main incentive to do it. But I had the opportunity to go to Worlds because that is without a doubt the biggest stage in natural bodybuilding. Because I've throughout growing up in bodybuilding, every natural bodybuilding sort of big show that I've watched on YouTube, for example, it's always been WNBF Worlds.
Yeah.
So that was like the main goal for me. At the start of the year, I wanted to compete abroad. That was one of the main goals I set for myself, and that was sort of the pinnacle. So that was definitely a factor in terms of wanting to compete with that the federation. And also, like I knew a few people that were affiliated with it as well, like Steve Hall, for example. I spoke to him a few times, and he had nothing but positive things to say. And I know he's got a great reputation within the industry, and I knew he'd never put his name to something that's not worthwhile as well.
Yeah. And I think Steph and Andy have always said that, where it's like, if you like to compete, we have a stage that we want you on. Like that's basically their mantra. It doesn't really matter like where else you want to compete, where else you've competed in the past. If you want to compete, we have a stage, and if you're ready, we would love you to step on it. So I'm really glad you took the chance to, and of course, like the incentives to travel to Worlds is just crazy. Like it's such an amazing opportunity that I think that it's offered out to a number of athletes to be able to kind of go out as a team and stuff. It was a really kind of special experience. Before we talk about Worlds, would you want to talk through like your show day experience with Supernaturals, and I guess you obviously won your British title, so what did that mean to you?
Being brutally honest, when I first arrived there, I almost walked out. Honestly, I did. I'd competed the week before. Yeah. And I had to take off too much to get into the class, to get into the middleweight class. I took off too much. I took 6 pounds off an already stage ready physique. So and because of that, I rebounded quite hard after the show, not through like overeating, literally just because my body was so sucked down. And then I felt like I didn't, but this is obviously somewhat of a prep brain now. I felt the whole way leading into the show that I just didn't look great. And then the morning of the show, I still didn't feel great. I also, so like I was doubting myself in terms of how I looked, but also psychologically, I don't know, I had quite a bit of sort of anxiety in terms of whether I could perform well on the day. Because for me, getting up on stage is still quite a big performance for me. Like it takes quite a lot of effort for me because I've got a few niggles here and there. So there was a lot of worry about that as well. And I was sat in the sort of lobby area, and there was a lot of me that was saying, I'm gonna leave. And obviously now I'm so glad I didn't. Yeah. But in terms of the rest of the day, it was all a blur at the start because of how I felt. And then we did pre-judging, and that was somewhat of a blur because I was so stressed about the performance itself. And then a few people spoke to me during the sort of break, and they said, Jack, you'll win this if you want to win it. Like if you want to win this and you show that you want to win it, that was the main thing. Because I was so nervous, it came across almost that, not that I didn't want to be there, but they could see that I was so stressed, and
you were in your head a little bit.
I wasn't enjoying the time on stage, and they said, Jack, if you just show that you're enjoying it and everything, you'll win this. And hearing that, like, lit a bit of a fire under me, and I thought, do you know what, like, if you just put one more good performance in, you go into LA, you're going to win this. And so sort of switched the head on for that, and then and then the rest is history, really. Like I think I performed a lot better in the sort of second half of the show because I thought I was in within a chance. Going into it, I knew there was a few really good people in the class, so I think that made it hard work. But then, the sort of second half was great, and then even more so, probably the highlight was the overalls then, because I knew I was really good friends with James Alabaster and Josh Bogdani, who both won their classes, and then we were in the overall together. So it was, you know, in an overall with two of your friends as well, and then a few of the foreign boys, which was a great experience as well, getting to compete against them. And obviously that's a really good part of competing with the WNBF now, that I speak to those boys quite regularly now, and you know, I'd never have got the chance to, you know, boys from Switzerland, boys from France. So yeah, that was the day. And then I was the last one. I remember I was the last one out of the venue in terms of competitors. Because that always ends up happening with me. For some reason, I've always ended up moping around. Well, not moping around, but just buzzing around the venue at the end, because I'm always on a buzz after it. I can remember I was one of the last ones. I think I was the last one that left. And then sat outside with my chicken and rice after the show. I had to drive back to Barnsley then for another late night. But no, I was on such a high after that. But I think, the highlight was definitely competing in the overalls against like two of my friends, and then a few of the foreign boys as well. Because the good thing with overalls is you feel like the pressure's off. I know, but that might be a bit of my downfall, because a few times maybe if I'd kept the pressure on, I'd have maybe performed a bit better. But overall is always a laugh, because the pressure's off and you're just out there to enjoy it then.
I think it's I kind of felt the same way about overalls. Like, just you've done, especially how you were feeling in the morning, the fact you've had that kind of turnaround in the day, and you're finishing the day on such a high. You just get to spend time on stage with the best athletes of the day. Like, it's such a fun, I think, experience at the end of the day. That's kind of like a highlight on top of the rest of the day. So I'm with you on that one. But maybe next time when you come back in 2 years' time, you've got the eye on the overall sword and the pro card. I don't know. Maybe that's time for that.
Because I know in one of the other shows last year, I had a client in it with me. So I'd prepped him for the show. He won his class. He won the novice class, and then I won the middleweights. And we went into the overalls together, and I wasn't, I was so happy after winning. And then he ended up beating me in the overalls. So I was a bit fuming with that. So maybe if I'd have been a bit more ahead in the game, because I've lost a couple of overalls now, and it's a bit frustrating when you do, because it's strange, because you've won and obviously you're really pleased with winning. But for me, unless I get the overall, it kind of takes the sort of edge off it a bit.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Like, genuinely, it's a weird one, because I think that you're on such a high, and you've had such a great day, and then it's just at the end of the day, it's like, oh, but you didn't win that. You didn't win that though.
And the problem is, I'm either a middleweight or a heavyweight. So one of the shows that I did, I was a heavyweight, and then went into the overall, and it's literally the quickest turnaround, because you're on stage as a heavyweight, you win, and then straight away
back on.
So you've literally got no time to celebrate it. So you're on a high from winning, and next thing you're out in the overalls, and if you lose that, it's the biggest up and down. So that is an issue.
How did you find moving to height classes in Supernaturals? Did you prefer that, or because it was different? Because then it was back weight classes, and
obviously the good part of that is there's no stress leading into the show really. However, I will disclose that in one of the other federations that does height classes, I was really friendly with a boy who at the time I thought we were very similar height. So I said to him that when we go into height in, that you go in for your spray tans, they put the little thin cardboard sheets under your feet. Well, I was going to plan to get quite a few, stack them up, because you couldn't tell if I had them on my feet. If I had them underneath, so it would give me a couple more centimeters, because I knew he'd be under and then I'd be over, because we didn't want to be in the same class. But ultimately, it never came down to it, because they split the classes. I can't remember what happened, but I do prefer. I shouldn't be telling people that, but
well, pretend that didn't happen.
It never actually happened, but I planned for it to happen. I do prefer it, because if I'm honest, weight categories, the problem with me is I'm always bordering between being the top of middleweight or bottom of heavyweight. That's always how it sits.
Yeah.
And last year, I had to take quite a lot off to get in the middleweight class that I wanted to.
Yeah.
Which in the end bit me in the backside because I knew everyone that was that had qualified for the finals as a middleweight, but forgot about the boy who didn't have to qualify because he's a British champ. So I thought I was in it with everyone that I knew I could beat. Yeah. And then he turned up and he beat me. But it definitely takes off the pressure of sort of weighing in on the day. However, obviously at Worlds, then you do weigh in, don't you? Because as crude as it sounds, to get into the middleweights at Worlds, I was spitting in the sink just before my weigh-in. Just to get, because I was on the dot, 176, bang on. So I knew if I was literally a point over, I was going to go up. So I was in the sink for a few minutes prior, and it got me bang on. But in hindsight, this isn't meant to disrespect anyone in the, light heavies, but the standard of light heavies wasn't as good as middleweights. So potentially, if I'd gone in light heavies, I might have won that. Yeah. But you'd never predict. You'd never think that though. You'd always take being the heaviest middleweight as opposed to the lightest light heavy, because I was the heaviest middleweight on the day. But no, I do prefer the height factor, but the weight thing does allow you to sort of manipulate things and try and get in a different. Whereas height, you've got no choice.
Yeah, completely.
Well, you've got no choice. Unless you've got no choice unless you get some wedges.
Brilliant. So we went to LA as a team, which was awesome. And so how did the LA experience compare to any other shows? How did LA Worlds compare to any other show that you've done in the past? And how did the trip feel for you as a whole?
I don't think really can compare it to anything else, can you? Yeah. Especially where it was as well. I know, how amazing. I don't think there could be many other cities that it would have been a better sort of, the first time I ever travel abroad to compete, it's in LA of all places. Yeah. I don't think I'd choose any other city to compete in, really. We went over in November and it was still 20 degrees when we were out there. Stunning. Yeah. So nice. The experience in itself, traveling out as a team, that felt really good, because that's never, I come from a sporting background that was always team, and then as soon as you move to bodybuilding, it's completely a solo show. Yeah. But it felt slightly different then, in terms of you were with a team, we were supporting each other, and then doing it in sort of because there's so much nostalgia in American bodybuilding over in California. Yeah. Going to Golds and stuff like that, walking across Venice, it was the perfect sort of way to end it, really. The show itself was incredible. Obviously I mentioned to you before, I've watched so many YouTube videos of Worlds, and it was literally exactly the same. I'm pretty sure the MC is the same as what is normally at Worlds. A lot of the judges are they repeat judges. So it was all listening to it being called out and stuff just reminded me of watching all the YouTube videos and stuff, and even the fact that a lot of the people that are competing there, especially in the pro ranks, I've watched for years. Yeah. So that was an amazing experience, and even just beating them in person, and also the fact that through social media I've met a lot of people as well. So meeting them from different countries, this, that, and the other. Yeah. And that was a great experience, and also the fact that there were so many competitors as well. I've never been I don't think anyone will ever be at a show like it. I think it was one of it's definitely the biggest natural bodybuilding show in the world. There were so many competitors there. Yeah. So it was just an experience in itself, being backstage with such a manic sort of, but they did very well with it, considering how small backstage, the cramped sort of hallway they managed to get everyone through and stuff. But no, it was an amazing experience. And also the best part of it was, I think I struggled a lot last year with show day anxiety, stressing about the show being performed. I didn't have anything that day. So I was actually able to enjoy it, which is why I kind of wasn't disappointed immediately with the results because I performed so well. After I was furious, but I think at the time I was so happy with how I performed. I didn't care about where I came just because I knew I brought my best and I did so well. But no, it was an amazing experience for sure.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes it's hard when you like look back at pictures and then you start like questioning decisions and whatnot, but you can't like forget that great feeling that you had on stage, right? When you've like enjoyed the whole day. And I guess, what do you think, that there was something different for you, like, or do you think it was just everything came together on the day, or was there something in particular that made it such a good day?
I can't really put my finger on it because if I could, then I'd try and implement that all the time, you know. But no, it was. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was almost like, you know, all the hard work's done now. You've done everything. This is literally just have fun with it. Maybe, I don't know. And I told myself, you know, this is a once in a it's strange because some of the stuff I told myself would technically add pressure to it, but it seems not. I basically said, you know, this is the biggest stage. Just go and enjoy it. You've done all the work for it. You know, you're out in LA. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know, but I'm glad it did happen though. So
Me too. How was it being on stage with James?
No, it was good. It was good, especially because we ended up being called out right next to each other. So for most of the show. But if I'm honest, when I'm on stage, I have absolute blinkers, and I didn't even acknowledge who was around me for the most time. I'm literally just stood.
I'm the same. I think it's really hard. You're just literally focusing on the judges. The lights are really bright and stuff. It's hard to focus on what else going on around you. But
especially the way they do it at Worlds is absolutely savage in terms of, like, I think we were in the front relaxed pose for like 15 minutes. Yeah. So you're just so focused on trying to, like, the whole time I'm thinking, make sure your legs are on, make sure your legs are on the whole time. And I was fortunate enough to stand dead center the whole of the symmetry round, so I didn't move the whole time. So I was just like, trying to stay as still as I could. Yeah,
you always know you're going to be an absolute pain the next day.
I was,
like that. Fab. So I guess just before we wrap up, what's the plan for you then? So you're in a 2-year off season. Is that the plan?
I think it's going to be a minimum. Yeah. Like I touched upon at the start, the reason why I end up getting on stage is just for my passion of training and how much I love bodybuilding. So I'm not in any like immediate rush. Don't get me wrong, I do absolutely love competing. But if it takes me a little bit longer to, like, if I had to do another 5-year off season, I would. Don't get me wrong, I don't really want to do it because, you know, going to shows every year for those 5 years was quite tough. Because, you know, I'm almost sat in the crowd with my sort of pictures, comparing myself to them, thinking,
of course,
we're there. So I think the next time I'll be on stage is at the earliest going to be 2025, probably. I've got to get on top of quite a few things. Not just within myself, you know, even things like business, just like life things in general. You know, I went full blinker mode last year and didn't really do anything else other than trying to get through a prep, to be honest. So I think if I am to learn anything from that, it would also be to, you know, make sure I'm staying on top of other things, you know, because, you know, as an online coach, doing a contest prep should bring you a lot of business. You know, a lot of people do that. You know, a lot of people compete just to get business. When I was so engrossed in the prep myself, I didn't advertise myself at all. So it's just one of those things. It's all a learning curve. So I think 2025 that's what I'm aiming for. But like I said, if it takes a little longer, I don't really mind. So that's the goal. So we'll have to see.
And do you think that means you'll be in the heavyweights then, or are you kind of done trying to fit into middleweight?
Well, realistically, I'm literally on the edge. Really, to be honest, I wasn't even a middleweight this year. But the problem is, in a lot of these federations, not necessarily in WNBF, it's a fixed weight class, so that's why it's good. Whereas in the other federations where they do weight classes, it's not a fixed weight class, it's not a fixed number. It's literally whoever turns up on that day,
they figure it out.
They'll divide you.
Yeah.
So I think, but in terms of WNBF, I'll be a light heavy. Yeah, there's no way. I was literally bang on, like nothing left to come off, not even any saliva in my mouth left, and I was bang on 178, 176. So I'm not getting down to that again. So I think light heavyweights will be the next, and I don't have to add too much more muscle for that, because I think a lot of the boys that are in that class are probably of a same, if not less, muscle than myself. It's just they weren't as conditioned as me. Because you got, like, without blowing smoke, that's me at 176, but with nothing else to come off. Yeah. They may be at 178 with 5 pounds to come off. Yeah. So if they were as conditioned as I was, they'd be smaller. But we'll see. I've got to get out there first. Because the standard's very high now these days, especially in British bodybuilding. So that'll be the next goal then, to qualify for Worlds at some point then. But I'm not sure how far in advance do they plan where the Worlds are going to be.
I feel like they kind of announced it the year before. I think this year coming is Seattle.
Seattle this year, and then I don't. So do they announce where the next one's going to be, for example? Or how
I don't
long
know when they'll talk about the year after.
Oh.
I feel like someone was maybe talking about New York, but I don't know if that's real or if that was just someone talking. But I don't know what 2025 will be.
We'll see. Hopefully a good one.
Somewhere good.
Because are they? A lot of the time they are always over in the States, aren't they?
Yeah, they're always in the States. Yeah.
I suppose because most of the federation are over there, aren't they? The big names and stuff. I'm not complaining, because I'd rather it be there. But I know some federations are popping up. Their Worlds are popping up in, like, Australia, for example, now, and I know the WNBF is growing massively across the world. So a lot of these newer countries are coming in, but it makes a lot more sense for it to be in the States.
You never know, they might say, we spotlight somewhere else, but that's the great thing about competing with WNBF as well. Like, you can go compete elsewhere, like at an amateur level as well. You can compete anywhere you want to go. But I think that maybe by 2025 we'll maybe have twisted Steph and Andy's arm into putting a pro show on in the UK, and we'll have like a big show in the UK, a big double.
That'll be mega. Yeah, that'll be good. Little story for you. I nearly ended up, I don't know how it would have panned out, but I wanted to get a Worlds qualification. I wanted to get it early. Yeah. So I was going to go to Ireland to do the WNBF Ireland show. Yeah. But my passport didn't come in time, so I couldn't get over to do it. But how would that have worked? So if I'd qualified at that show, even though I have a British passport, and obviously I'm British, would I have gone over with Team Ireland, or would I think
you would have? Yeah, because Max came out with us, didn't he? He was
exactly. So I'd have been with Team Ireland out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm glad that it didn't work out that way.
I didn't think there were many out there for Ireland. I know two. I definitely know two. But I think it might have just been those two. So I'm very glad. I'm very glad as well. We had an awesome team out there, so I was really glad to be part of that.
We really did. Right, final question. We're fast approaching the 2023 First Timers and Novice Championships. Yep. What advice do you have for our first timers?
The obvious one, as we touched upon at the start, I'd say get ready early.
Yeah.
If you think you need 12 weeks, you probably need 16. And even if you only need 12, those 4 weeks are just going to allow you to sort of chill out a bit.
Absolutely.
I think first-time competitors think they're a lot leaner than they are. You've got a lot more to come off than you think. Definitely enjoy it for a start. Like you may only get one shot at competing. Who knows? Yep. So enjoy it when you're there. I definitely would say don't shut yourself off to everyone. Like, whether that's in person or even on social media. These days you've got access to, like, I know I said at the start I didn't have many friends around me, but realistically I spoke to hundreds of people every day on socials. Yeah. So, definitely keep in contact with people. And I've always been really good for it. I get hounded for it, but take as many pictures as you can. Because like it's a bit embarrassing, but honestly, during prep, I would have taken over 100 pictures a day, just of me. Like, don't get me wrong, 50 would have been the same, just to get the right sort of angle, whatever. But I took so many pictures. I got 37,000 pictures on my phone, and I reckon 12,000 of them would have been that last prep that just went. So just take the picture, because you'll want those memories forever. Honestly, like, every day or any big event, make sure you take pictures.
Love it. I completely agree. Awesome. So I can't end today's episode without going through the quick fire question round with you, Jack. So I didn't prep you for this, right? But I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions, and I need you to answer instinctively the first thing that comes into your head. You ready?
Okay.
Cream of rice or protein oats?
Protein oats.
Post-show meal of choice?
Burger and chips.
Pump or stim pre-workout?
Stim.
High rep range or low rep range?
High.
Steps or Stairmaster?
Stairmaster.
Free weights or machines?
Free weights.
Are shows one from the front or one from the back?
Oh, wow. Wow. I don't even know these days, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I know, obviously this isn't a quick fire, but I used to always say back, but I look at some of the shows this year and it's definitely not. I'll say that.
I think I agree with you.
These days, if I'm honest, especially in natural bodybuilding, shows are won by who has the best front relaxed, to be honest. Like, I think that makes such a good impression on people. And
it's
just
the first thing they see when you come out. Right?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even the front relaxed, it's just how they look standing there, because it makes such a good impression. So I think, practice your front relaxed. So I'll say no, they're not. They're one from the front then.
One from the front. Okay, off season or prep?
Off season.
Yeah, I think I agree, actually. I'm loving being a human. It's the best. And okay, these last two aren't quick fire either. Best part of show day?
I'd say just being on stage. That's the best for me. Being on stage. Yeah, seeing everyone in the crowd, and if you've got anyone in there cheering and stuff, that's probably the best.
Fab. And
or picking up the trophy when you win.
Oh, well, of course. I think you're the first person that said that, and everyone else is a liar. Perfect. And the last question is, favorite thing about being a natural bodybuilder?
For me, it's the fact that I can tell my dad, because if I told my dad I was enhanced, he'd beat the crap out of me. So, I don't know. Within the fitness industry itself, no one cares if you say, "Oh, I'm a natural bodybuilder." Yeah. But to general public, I think it gets quite a bit more of, like, not respect, but like, if you're an enhanced bodybuilder, a lot of people frown on it a bit within general public. So I think that there's obviously that. Ultimately, I love bodybuilding as a whole. I don't segregate myself, or I'm a natural bodybuilder. I know it's in my bio on Instagram, but most of the reason for that was when I was teaching, I didn't want kids accusing me of being on steroids. So I can see that. Yeah, I don't know. Probably just the fact that you can compete in the federations we do. That's probably the first thing that I can think of. Say that.
Perfect. Love it. Jack, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And thank you to everyone for listening at home. In 2 weeks, I'll be back with episode 8, and I'm going to get to catch up with one of my favourite people, Vicky Clark.
It won't be as good as this one, though.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to prep Vicky well for coming on after you, Jack. So Vicky stepped on stage in our First Timers Championships last year, won the First Timers figure title, and then she went on to win her NPA British title and was runner-up in her figure class at the WNBF Supernaturals. And like Jack and I, she earned her place in the LA team and smoked it up there at Worlds Level 2. What a story about what a first-timer season can look like. Until episode 8, thank you so much again, Jack. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back in a few weeks. This has been the WNBF UK podcast. And that's us.
Boom.
Check out CNP, our sponsors, and sign up for our events at WNBFUK.com.